All right, good evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Zamora.
Here.
Harmon. Boutros.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Whitbeck.
Here. And this is the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting for Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. Just for those in the audience, just want to remind or just let you know if you intend to speak before the commission today, there's a sign-up sheet that you'll need to sign up for before we declare the meeting open or the hearing open. So with that, I'll move on to the consent calendar. Actually, excuse me, conflict of interest declaration. Are there any conflicts of interest from commissioners? Seeing none. No special presentations, so we'll move on to the consent calendar. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
There was a motion made by Commissioner Boutros. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Larson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And so as we move forward into our action items, I just want to review just a change of our procedure, just kind of a modification a little bit. So we're just going to ask commissioners to hold their questions on the application until after the applicant has had a chance to present. So the staff will still give the report first, followed by the applicant, and then we'll have opportunity to ask questions both of the applicant and then staff can add some information there. And because this is a very large application, we'll just take turns and I'll just go down the line asking individual commissioners what questions they may have for the respective parties. With that, I will go ahead and review our opening statement. So this is a regularly scheduled meeting for the Caldwell Planning and Zoning Commission. We serve both in a decision-making capacity and an advisory capacity for the mayor and city council. There are two types of public hearings that this commission conducts. The first is the legislative hearing, whereby we formulate recommendations on certain land use requests. Our recommendations are then forwarded onward to the city council, who makes the decision on legislative matters. The second type of public hearing is quasi-judicial. A quasi-judicial hearing involves in consideration of a land use request, such as an annexation, rezone classification, or approval of a subdivision preliminary plat. The public hearing procedures as required by the Idaho Code are as follows. Oral and written testimony will be accepted from those who have signed in to speak prior to the hearing being declared open. When providing testimony, please come to the podium, state your name and address, which will be included into the record. Staff will first present a report regarding the application being considered. Public testimony will follow. The applicant then will have, or the applicant's representative will present a summary of the request for no more than 10 minutes. Testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by those in neutral position, and finally those in opposition to the request. And all public testimony will be limited to 5 minutes or less. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to provide a rebuttal testimony. After the rebuttal testimony is given, the public testimony portion of the hearing will be closed and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed. So with that, there's no old business, so we'll move on to new business. And so I'll go ahead and declare this public hearing open. This is case number ANN 2316, CPM 23-11, DEV 23-4, PUD 23-6, SUB 23-42, and ZON 23-9. Staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Commission. Good evening. There we go. Perfect. My name is Joseph Dodson, Senior Planner with the City of Caldwell Planning and Zoning Department, 621 Cleveland Boulevard. Again, as you noted, multiple applications before you tonight for Midland 2026. 6 total application types over a lot of different things here. So, step 1, let's just look at the overall site and its location. The project encompasses 22 parcels across approximately 406 acres, at least for all of the application types, and I'll get into the details. I also hope that you guys are able to review my staff report. I had to break that down separately and than most applications would be, just because of the breadth of this project. The overall project has multiple public street frontages and is generally proposed at the intersection of Midland and 2026, hence the project name. It does have 4 sub-areas, as you can see on the plan on the left side of the screen: Lower 5, Highline, Midland Farms, and the Aviary sub-area. The public hearing notifications for the application were all per code. They were all done on time and correctly per state statute. There were about 6 or 7 agency notifications received or agency comments received. I highlighted 4, one from the Valley View School District, who didn't note any concerns or opposition to the thing, just noted that they provided enrollment numbers, et cetera. ITD has not yet submitted a final letter, but I have discussed the project with them, and as we know, this is along 2026, so a lot of that corridor is already planned and expected to be expanded, period. Canyon Highway District also had some specific comments, and engineering responded to those in turn with their staff report, which included some and excluded some of the requested conditions. And then, again, engineering provided their staff report. Fire also provided theirs and said that it can be serviced and complies with the phasing and access and all those. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, give or take, there are 4 pieces of public testimony submitted, 3 in opposition, noting issues with developing more ag land, modifying the comp plan, and then just the general increase in traffic in this area of the city. One did note a neutral position on that application, and I believe she is the owner-operator of an industrial area nearby this, and just wanted to make sure that buffering and incompatible uses were noted. So, background for the site, rather extensive, so bear with me here. The lower 5 and Highline subareas, which are those areas north of 2026, were actually annexed in 2006 with the R1 designation for Eagle Rock subdivision, and at that time was proposed with 512 lots within a preliminary plat. Currently, there is no development plan proposed for this area, just some comp plan map amendments and annexation, and some rezones. So, I know I'll also note that at that time in 2006, when things were annexed, they did not have a comp plan designation prior to. So when they came in to annex, they also designated the comp plan, which is why it's R1 right now, rather than what probably staff would have asked for that to be through a comp plan change. And through the subsequent comp plan amendments over the years, that area was never changed. So that's why it's still R1 today. The Midland Farm subarea, which is the southwest subarea, was also annexed in 2006 with R1 for a White Pine Station application, and that had 340 lots. And then you have the Aviary subdivision area, which was, I believe, Aviary back in 2006 when it was annexed as well, but did not include any plat at the time. It was just conceptual in nature. Included a number of different housing types and some commercial in the northwest corner of the project. All of those had development agreements that are currently existing, which is why there's a DA modification application to terminate those DAs, and then we will enter into 4 new ones. So I have not written those quite yet. Technically, commission is not the deciding body on the DAs, which is why we do not have to decide that tonight. Those will be done and ready before council, and council will make those. Should commission want to recommend any DA provisions, you are allowed to do that through your deliberation and your decision-making tonight. Conditions surrounding the site, I just wanted to highlight a larger area. In the red orangish is the total project area, approximately 400 acres, like I noted. Northeast is a lot of undeveloped county land, even to the east and southeast. However, there is a large development planned east of this site even. I've had a pre-application meeting at least once with about somebody who's got control of 300 acres that way, and it does almost abut the Nampa area of impact on the far right side of the screen. And just for reference for commission, Nampa all along 2026 has mixed use, commercial, or some type of high density use all along the corridor, which is consistent with a lot of what we have with highway corridor through most of the 2026 corridor. Directly to the south is an existing county subdivision. To the west is already existing R1, but then there's also Valencia Village and the highway corridor, which is the hatched blue. Escalon Park is the R1 area directly to its east, and then you have Mason Creek, which is to the southwest of that area. All residential subdivisions of some kind, including some multifamily. West of I believe it's the Sunrock site, which is west of the Diagonal Railroad right-of-way. It's also undeveloped. My understanding is there was an application that came through at some point, but never really made it through the process there, so that site is still undeveloped. North of the property is Midland Meadows, which was approved by City Council recently, and that includes additional residential. So to be very specific with what the applicant is requesting tonight, there is a request for annexation and zoning, which is just in the Highline area of approximately 11.5 acres to the R2 zoning district. There are 5 comprehensive plan map amendments that total approximately 200 acres, 8 rezone requests totaling approximately 309. Again, the noted development agreement modification application, then a plan unit development and preliminary plat for the Aviary subdivision that consists of 471 single-family lots and 3 commercial lots on 148 acres. You will note that the staff report notes 472 single-family lots, so they lost one in response to one of the conditions of approval, and I'll go over that later in the presentation. So, bear with me. I tried to break this down again as I did in the staff report, but for your benefit tonight, as well as the public's just trying to break these down to understand. So, multiple comprehensive plan map amendments. As you can see, we'll start on the left side. That's the lower 5 area. They are proposing to go from low-density residential to highway corridor, medium, and then keep low density on the north side. This is something that you can see as a good transition from the busy corridor of Highway 2026. And you can also see that the city has done this exact transition in other areas along this corridor, again, because of the previous way that the city did map amendments or designated future land uses. At the time of annexation, it just matched what that request was at the time, which is why it's R1. Then to the east of Midland, for Highline sub-area, you have existing highway corridor. They're not proposing to change that at all, but they are proposing to change the annexation area from residential estates to medium density residential. And in all honesty, upon review of this, I was really surprised to see residential estates directly adjacent to highway corridor. That is frankly not a good transition between land uses when you're looking at a larger scale of future land use designations. So we would assume that it would be closer to what is being proposed and has been shown on the lower 5 sub-area, which would be highway corridor, medium or high density residential, and then some other type of residential. Moving to the south side of 2026, you have the Midland Farm sub-area, which is the southwest sub-area. You have, again, existing R1 in all those areas. They're proposing commercial and service along Midland 2026 with high-density residential on the west side of the railroad tracks. Initially, staff has no concerns with that, noting that blue area directly north of the high-density residential is one of the people who submitted comments regarding transition and buffering between their industrial use. Completely agree. Through the development agreement that we will write, there will be very specific provisions regarding buffering of future uses. Now, it should be noted, there are no conceptual development plans submitted at this time, so a lot of the provisions will be very broad, but also they might be more specific than what the applicant may want at this time, only because there is nothing specifically proposed. So we'll work through that. My main point is that the buffering, both to the residential, the residential to the west and south, the industrial to the north, and the railroad tracks will be accounted for through the DA. For Aviary, which is the only area that is submitted with a plat right now in specific development, they are proposing to change from highway corridor to medium density residential, and then add additional commercial and service, and then keep the low density on the south half of the site, roughly. All of these, this is bigger picture. It's kind of hard to see, but you got to get your bearings there. You can see the purple bisects a lot of it, and that's a good point of reference. But this shows just what is existing and what's proposed. You can also see, as I noted to the west, there's already the comp plan designations of highway corridor, medium density residential, which is again, a much more appropriate transition. On the south side, because of the canal, staff finds that it makes sense to not entirely have highway corridor on the south side because it's going to limit the type of commercial and the access that ITD is ever going to allow there. So having that all residential can make sense there. As far as the rezones, it matches a lot of what the comp plan map amendments are doing. They're just matching the zoning to those comprehensive plan map amendment requests. So again, lower 5, they're going from R1 to highway corridor, R2, which is medium density residential, and then keeping the R1 on the north side. Highline on the right side, they're currently R1 is the main area, which is not consistent with the designation that exists, so they're actually bringing it into compliance with the comp plan to go highway corridor, and then proposing to annex that 11.5 acres with the R2. Then again, Midland Farms, same thing, commercial and service, they're proposing C3 adjacent to Midland Boulevard. And then the high density residential future land use, they're proposing the R3 designation, and then keeping the R1 south of the canal. And then for aviary, you can see what looks like really interesting and weird zoning that's existing, which was with a concept plan and did not follow the current layout of the canals, is on the left, and the right would be what they're proposing, which matches their plat. Again, R1 for the majority of the site, R2 in the northwest corner, C1, which is like neighborhood commercial, C2, which is community commercial, you could call it, on this southwest corner. And again, big picture, just showing all those changes of what's existing to what's now. In a lot of ways, they're just moving designations around. Also, being more consistent with what staff would say is an appropriate transition from the busy corridor of the Highway 2026. Now, specifically, the development that is proposed tonight, which is the only area that has a specific plan, is the aviary PUD and subdivision. It is a request for 471 single-family lots, 3 commercial lots on 148 acres. It's a gross density for the residential component of about 3.4 dwelling units per acre, which I would like to note through the PUD, they could have gone up to 6, so they're vastly under that. And if you, depending on how you do the math and how the total area you take, they probably could be a lot closer to 3 units per acre if they wanted to do the math that way. So either way, this is not a dense project by any standards of planning understanding of densities. So I just wanted to make that note. The proposal does include a mix of residential land uses. So there's 264 traditional front-loaded detached single-family homes, 135 alley-loaded homes, 52 front-loaded single-family attached lots, which they're only attached in doubles, and then 20 alley-loaded single-family attached lots. So again, 2 units attached, but alley-loaded. There was a TIS required with this. It approximated about 15,000 daily trips, additional daily trips. However, it included the aviary subdivision and the Midland Farms area in a conceptual nature. So it technically is showing and proposing 2 of the 4 sub-areas as part of that TIS. Again, they're not proposing anything specific with the Midland Farms area at this time, but this aviary subdivision is not the full 15,000. So I just wanted to note that. Engineering reviewed those. We're still in discussion and going back and forth with the applicant on certain changes, but generally the applicant has agreed to the conditions of approval. And I'll go into some of the specifics that was noted as a late exhibit from the applicant regarding the things that they do hope to modify or get a recommendation from you guys tonight. Through the PUD, they are asking for some deviations from dimensional standards, specifically for the residential lots, both in lot size and their setbacks, which accommodates the attached unit as well as some skinnier lots for the alley-loaded homes in general. All of their detached homes comply with the existing standards. One of the things that they're asking for is a deviation from the minimum lot frontages for multiple, basically all the alley-loaded lots. And this area on the right, which I am showing here, they're proposing or requesting 0-foot required frontage per our standards because alleys do not count as frontage in the city of Caldwell. And so they would technically front on the open space rather than on a street, but their access is on the alley side. This is something that is done in other jurisdictions and usually has no issue in the livability of it. It really reduces the amount of asphalt that you need, so staff does support that request, as I noted in my staff report. They've also asked for deviations from alley widths. Code requires 24 feet. They're asking for 20 feet. My understanding is the 24 feet includes 20 feet of asphalt or 20 feet of concrete and then 2-foot apron on each side to help with drainage. They're proposing 20 feet of concrete alley with the drainage in the center. And so it just changes that dynamic. Again, less concrete, less impermeable surface to deal with. So again, staff supports that. And fire has also gone through and worked with the applicant and has approved those reduced widths as well. Within the staff report, I did call out some specific issues where they needed to comply or work with us. One of them, well, I should say, I'll go through the list real quick. There were specific issues called out about the street buffers along the commercial property, which they have said that they're going to correct following this hearing. Connectivity with all open spaces, specifically within that area north of the canal, Depending on what happens with the ITD right-of-way, that may or may not happen, but they have agreed to work with the irrigation district to try to get a pedestrian crossing across that canal, which would increase connectivity for the entire area, which would be fantastic. I also noted some concerns with the legal description and exhibits for the annexation area, just because there's a little piece that may or may not be in the highway corridor zone versus the R2. We can work through that as well. It's not a major deal at this time. Those have to be done prior to getting a formal approval from council, and we'll continue to work through that. Then we discuss pathway landscaping and fencing. I have a slide on that as well later. And then this, which is the guest parking as required through the PUD for lots that have reduced frontages. Staff said that through the alley loaded areas in the main area of the plat, all of the available on-street parking is sufficient to satisfy that requirement. In this area, as noted in the exhibit on the left, that's what they originally submitted. That just conceptually showed the guest parking. I asked that they actually show that on the plan so we know that it can be complied with. This is the area where they lost one lot in order to accommodate that parking, and they're gonna have a minimum 13 spaces in there, as well as additional pedestrian connectivity between the blocks. I would also like to note, as they have noted, that area is subject to redesign based on the 2026 right-of-way. That area does not depict the additional right-of-way that ITD will likely take. However, that is actively being discussed. That whole area should probably just shift south and the density will be reduced. From a planning perspective, we could go through this whole process, get approved as this, and then at final plat, ITD at any point could come in for any project for that matter and ask for right-of-way, and then they have to reduce their density, and commission and council never see it. So that would just be done at the final plat stage. Is it the cleanest and prettiest way to do it? No, but that happens. So my point in bringing that up is just staff does not want a project to be held up for something that is not yet solid, as they have to still work with ITD to get that final dimension, as well as the monetary side of it, which is not our concern, but still a part of the application for the applicant. The specific conditions that the applicant noted that they had concerns with or would like modifications are these 5, which was fencing along the irrigation canal pathway, the PUD expiration timeline, right-of-way for internal collector roadway, alley widths throughout the project, and Joplin Road alignment. So I'll go through the first couple. The fencing along the irrigation canal, that was my mistake. Reading the different sections of code that I've admitted to you guys already is confusing, why we're changing them. The fencing is actually only required along the lot side of the pathway. I said both sides. That doesn't need to be included in the condition. So I just asked that through your motion, you would recommend a modification of condition C1. Similar with the PUD expiration, as we've changed the languages regarding expiration of plats, which is going through and going to city council in a couple of weeks to be formalized, so it'll be in effect before this would go to council. It has different timelines now, and that was just in our boilerplate condition. I did not modify that, and I should have. So I'm just recommending that it be changed to what I have underlined below and just strike the existing language. In your motion, you could just say, as staff's recommended modification. You don't have to be this specific. But because this is part of the record, I can copy and paste. The other 3 are here. So 1, the right-of-way for the internal collector roadway. The red area that is highlighted by the applicant is where they would like the collector roadway street section to stop. The blue lines, which now I realize are not in the right places, I apologize. It's my color drawing skills there for you. Engineering staff has asked that the collector roadway, 70-foot right-of-way, go all the way to the center lot, basically. Applicant is asking that they only do it to their red box, which would be the first internal local street intersection. My understanding is that engineering and the applicant can work through that. At this time, it's not a major issue, and so we would just request that we continue to work through that prior to city council. The alley widths throughout the project, so again, planning did not have a condition regarding this. Engineering did have a condition regarding it because they asked them to comply with their current standards. The applicant is just asking that condition be modified in order to accommodate for the recent discussions, as well as fire approving the reduced width. And then lastly, the Joplin Road alignment. Joplin Road is a proposed collector in the lower 5 sub-area, which is in the northwest. Technically, it is shown near the quarter mile north, so a quarter mile north of 2026 on Midland, as a collector to go east-west through that site. the applicant is proposing a lower, so further south collector, because they state that they've discussed with Sunrock, the existing facility on the west side, about a better location for that. Because that area is just conceptual in nature, staff, I guess at this time proposes, yes, to modify the condition in the staff report. However, there will be a specific DA provision within that DA for that sub area discussing this. That's going to offer flexibility for both us as the city as well as the applicant. So in summary, we do recommend that if the commission does recommend approval, that such request is subject to the conditions as specified in the findings of fact, and then just include the recommended modifications made by staff. And following the applicant's presentation, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. I just do have to say thank you for the report. It was very thorough and comprehensive and complex, so thank you for that. So with that, I will ask, I have John Wardle. Are you providing the presentation?
I am.
All right, please say your name and address to the record, and you will have no more than 10 minutes.
Thank you, Commission. My name is John Wardle. My address is 2929 West Navigator, Meridian, Idaho 83642.
Commission, I apologize, I forgot to ask. Because this is such a complex project, staff was going to request that the applicant gets an extra 5 minutes to try to get through their presentation, because they're going to have probably more detailed information for you than I did regarding the units and the look and feel of it. If you do not have to, but as the city, we would like to request that, just to give a fair opportunity.
Just quick consensus. Are you okay with that? I'm fine with that. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
And I will do my best to be concise. Like I said, my name is John Wardle with Brighton. The thing that's interesting tonight is this is 406 acres, but there's also a group of owners that are involved in this together. So tonight I'm also representing Alturas, Brighton, DWT Investments, Yamamoto Family, Midland Farms, and Winco. So we're all applicants with this project, but I'm representing all of them tonight before you. Want to thank staff, planning and engineering, and the other members of the city who've taken the time to review these applications. It is a large project, but it's not complex. I think Joe did a really good job explaining the different aspects of this project. And a lot of things that I have, he already spoke to. I'll try to gloss over those very quickly, and we can come back and answer any questions based on the slides that are here too. So all of this property, with the exception of 11.5 acres, is already annexed and zoned into the city. There's a 11.47 acre piece, which is part of the High Line depicted area, which has not been annexed and zoned, but the rest of these properties have been, and those go back to about 2006. Like Joe mentioned, there were a few prior applications, Eagle Rock, White Pine, and then the one that was we call Aviary was called Kapika. Those were the DAs that were adopted in 2006 and brought those properties into the city. So these have been in the city for a long time. It was the lower 5 and Highline properties had preliminary plats associated with them, as did the Midland Farms, but the Aviary property did not. You know, our approach when we're looking at a project, we really want to start with community in mind. We want to look at what is there now and what the vision is for the future. We like bigger projects. Not because of the overall size and scale, but because we can do and plan for a lot of different things. So the design approach and the themes that we had for these properties are relationships, connecting people and the land. Walkability is a big thing. Lifestyle, providing a diversity of housing types and opportunities. Vibrancy, we need both housing and we need commerce. And the last one is a healthy lifestyle. We need ways for people to connect personally, but we also need to provide services where they can get the services that they need. Talking about this, I'm going to break this into really two sections, and this will simplify my discussion just like Joe did. The first part is what we call Midland 2026. These are the sub areas that are up here on your map, the lower 5, Highline, Midland Farms, and Aviary. And these are the applications that include the comprehensive plan amendments, the rezone, the annexation, and the development agreements. Part 2 is aviary, which deals with the preliminary plat and the PUD. So that's how I'm going to take my discussion. So the first part is the comp plan, rezone, annexation, and DAs related to Midland 2026. Just to restart here, we are truly at the intersection of Midland and 2026. 3 of the 4 corners are included in this. There's 1 parcel that's not included on the hard corner. And then Midland Farms is the property that's the furthest to the south. There is an existing railroad spur that is kind of on the west side of Lower 5 and cuts through Midland Farms. And then there are a variety of irrigation facilities that are out there, in particular on aviary. We have 3. We have the Caldwell High Line, we have the Madden Spur, and we also have the Weymouth. Those all cut through the aviary property. This also just gives you context of these same properties, but how does it relate to roadways that are there today or roadways that will be expanded in the future? As we know, 2026 is an active development right now. There are plans for the expansion of 2026 from Middleton all the way to Star. That's highlighted in yellow. We also have the principal arterial, which is Middleton. Your green are your minor arterials like Midland, Linden, Lincoln, and Northside. And then finally, the purple are collectors, which are, some of those are built, others are designated on the plan. I won't spend much time on this, but as Joe mentioned, there are comprehensive plan changes here, there are rezones, and there are concepts which will all roll into the DA. This relates to the lower 5, the current adopted and proposed there. The little arrow up in the top right, as we go through these, will show you which area we're talking about. These are the zones for the same lower 5. R1 right now, but it would go from R1 to R2, then to highway commercial. Consistent with the comp plan request. The lower 5, this is what we've indicated that the proposed, and this would be kind of the framework for the development agreement, the type of uses, how they would work within the existing city code, and our expectation for future development. I will note that in this area where it shows the commercial down there on the corner of Midland 2026, that's the property that has been acquired by Winco. The question may come up as when. All I can say is, in our conversations with Winco, is that they are very committed to doing something here. They've already purchased the property with the intent that they will build a store. Timing not known, but it will come in the future. And I just wanted to make that clear that having grocery and services out here is super important. And this is consistent with these comp plan and rezone requests. This is across the road, what we call High Line. So this is on the east side of Midland. The little area up here in yellow, just for context, that's generally the area that is being annexed and zoned. That's the part that's not in the city currently, and this shows a little bit better. We're looking at doing R2 on there, and there'll be a little cleanup on the legal descriptions for that. And the rest of it is highway corridor, which is also, if we go back to the previous one, is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the highway corridor, which is already there today. But we're asking for a rezone there. And then same thing with the concept and the type of uses and expectations. Midland Farms to the south. This is south of 2026 on the west side of Midland Road. It is bisected by the rail spur. The rail spur services Sunrock, and I'll get into that in a little bit later. We realize that we need uses there. We'll need to buffer against that as well as other uses. It does create a little bit of a challenge. The Caldwell High Line drainage also cuts through the middle of it, and that's kind of that serpentine green mark that goes around there. That's a drain or a lateral as well. So there's some unique things that happen here on Midland Farms. Here are the proposed zones. And again, the concept of what our expectations are for future development on this property. And finally, aviary. This one is interesting. The existing comprehensive plan is on the left-hand side where it shows highway corridor, which comes out halfway through the property. And then the rest of it was low-density residential. This one is complicated because of the High Line, which again, Caldwell High Line drain is the serpentine one to the north. The Madden comes in at a 45 from the southeast up to the northwest, and the Weymouth is across the top along 2026. These are, although Pioneer Irrigation District is involved in them, they're also Bureau Reclamation facilities. A little hard to relocate those. You can work within some parameters, but they do cause some constraints and disconnects here. I'm not sure how, but if you go back in time in 2006, there is a concept plan. Like I said, Kapika, there was not a preliminary plat, but we call this the egg yolk. When you look at the zoning, it's just got the C1 in the middle. They've got some higher density around it, C2 on the corner, and R1 transition to the south. We're proposing a change to R1 on the majority of it. Commercial, both C1, which should be very light or low intense commercial, and then C2 on future Skyway, and then R2 up against the 2026 corridor. And again, here are the concepts for this. Regarding the development agreements, we could go through and just modify it, but it's easier just to collapse those and establish a new development agreement for each one of these new phases or these new sub areas. So Lower 5, High Line, Midland Farms, and Aviary will all have distinct new development agreements with those owners. The one difference here would be Aviary would also be included with their preliminary plat, and the PUD would be in that development agreement. Just some comments from staff, just to highlight a few of these. The proposed comprehensive plan map amendments are consistent with the overall intent and spirit of the plan. The plan map amendments bring this area into greater compliance. They show more appropriate land use transitions, and we know transitions are important. It also provides a good buffer between 2026 and the lower density areas to the south and to the north. And it does bring more commercial services and employment centers to the area. And then on the rezone, staff also mentioned that it is consistent with the comp plan amendments that we've submitted, which is important. It also maintains the appropriate transition, and it should be consistent with the proposed future land use and in compliance with Caldwell City Code. Like we mentioned, I won't just spend really any time on this, but the request for Joplin is Sunrock has an active operation. They bring in rail, and putting a road through the middle of their operation really causes them a variety of issues. They are in the county currently. We will work with staff to figure out what the best alignment would be, but we are establishing alignment there circled in yellow that would provide an east-west connection from Midland over to basically the half mile, and then it could loop up and around Sunrock's property. We've talked with Sunrock about this, where that alignment is. It would actually cut through their site, but not through their rail operation. And the other collector road going over to Middleton would also go around their facility and their property, but not cut through their operation. So that's what's demonstrated there. So with the noted modifications, we just simply request your recommendation for approval for these applications for the comp plan amendment, the annexation, the zoning modifications, and the development agreement. So that's part one. That handles in a real nutshell the 4 different sub areas. Part 2 is specific to Aviary, which is the preliminary plat and the PUD. You know, I mentioned this at the beginning, and we didn't want this just to be lip service, but we want it to be a real design theme through the project. And so when we talk about these things specifically, and I go through Aviary and talk about it today, when we talk about relationships, it's designed for individuals to interact and have a social experience. And we talk about walkability. Aviary should offer an extensive and connected pathway for both active and passive uses, and they're intentionally designed for variety and connectivity. Lifestyle, that really relates to a diversity of housing opportunities, both smaller and bigger, but the benefit of this is a more robust amenity package for all the residents to use. And we are demonstrating that. Vibrancy, a mix of uses. For us, it's important to have not only the residences, but those residences need services. This property project, Aviary has three different locations for commercial uses, but we also looked at this in the context of the other projects and the commercial that they would offer, and we think we're checking that box as well. And finally, promoting a healthy lifestyle. When we talk about this, you could go a lot of different directions with that, but our focus here is that, we're providing fitness opportunities, we're providing pathways, we're providing a lifestyle coordinator who brings people together, for people within the community to communicate, have civil discourse instead of staying at their homes. 148 acres within the Aviary Plan community, 471 homes. One was removed, about 3.4 homes per acre. Within the project, there's 7.64 acres of commercial uses that are intended to offer commercial uses at a neighborhood scale. And then again, a variety of active and passive amenities. One of the things that, the two things I really want to touch on quickly are pedestrian connections and on-site amenities, because this will be the lifeblood of not only Aviary, but it will also be an extension of people living around that will be able to take advantage of, for at a very minimum, all the pathways that will be installed here. This exhibit right here may be a little bit fuzzy or cloudy, but let me just talk to it really quickly. Along the top, we know that ITD is expanding 2026. They're going to do two 10-foot pathways, one on each side. And our intent is we want to find ways that we can connect to it. Around the property, we're going to be building 8-foot sidewalks detached from the curb line, so they won't be sitting on curb line. They'll be separated with a tree line. So that'll be on Midland, future Skyway, and Knott Lane. And then we also are building an 8-foot pathway system along the Caldwell Highline Canal and the Madden Canal. Just for context, that's 4,800 lineal feet of just pathways internal to the project, 7,400 lineal feet of sidewalks external to the property. And then we have these micropath connections which come into the middle, but they get people to those pathway systems. This doesn't include the tree-lined streets. Was that 15?
That was 10.
Okay.
5 more.
I'll,
Oh, it was?
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
All right. Then I will, let me just summarize. Joe did mention all of the amenities in here, and if these come up, I can talk about it a little bit more, but lifestyle is a big deal. This leads with us putting a lifestyle director in the property, in the project, and these are the things that we will do through the property. We looked at how we would amenitize it with a clubhouse, pool, pickleball, basketball courts, an event lawn where we could have food trucks, large outdoor spaces within here. A little just concept really quickly. Spread throughout the property as well, outside of the core. We have 6 parklets where there will be tot lots. There'll be tot lots, dog parks, that type of thing. And then he already talked about these. We are in agreement with the staff report. We've made recommendations. Staff has acknowledged those, and I believe we're in agreement on these. And the alleyway, the street section, the frontages, and then the setbacks throughout.
Okay.
So, and again, we are just asking for your approval of this preliminary plat and PUD for Aviary, and your recommendation to the City Council for these applications. So, stand for any questions at the point in time you are ready to ask those of me.
Perfect. Thank you. So with our new flow, we're going to just kind of go around and have commissioners ask questions, and so everybody has an opportunity. So I'll just kind of go down the line. Commissioner Whitbeck, do you have any questions at this time? I defer to applicant for them to start. Okay. Well, Commissioner Larson.
All right, thank you.
I have a couple.
And if there's a specific part of this you want me to flip back to, I can do that as well.
Yeah, there was the zoning map amendment for the High Line. I think it was a staff concern. so it's probably a staff question. The maps and any submitted legal description therefore need to be corrected to either show this parcel with highway corridor zoning or include the parcel in the comprehensive plan map to the medium density designation. I think you guys already covered that, right?
Yes, yeah, Commissioner
Okay.
Larson, can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. I gotta eat the mic. Yeah, the applicant had already noted that they are in agreement with that, and we'll work through that prior to council to just clean up. It should just be that one little piece where it jogs down, that would be the only discrepancy.
Okay. The other thing was the traffic impact study saying that it was lots F and E. And just to clarify that those are the only two main roads you guys have, because I didn't see any other losses for any of the other roads impacted. It was 2026 and Midland Boulevard, and then the other one was Skyway and Midland Boulevard were the only two that gave losses.
Is that a question for the applicant?
It's a question for the staff or applicant. Did the other roadways not need losses, or you guys just didn't describe them in the traffic impact study?
Commissioner Larson, sorry, this is Joe again. When you mean say losses, I apologize.
Yeah, so they have loss for the road type.
Level
So
of service, got it.
yeah. So it's F and E were what they were both rated, but the other roads that were listed, I didn't see any losses for them. So I was just wondering if that was intentional.
I'll let the applicant speak to that
Yeah.
more, but from what I remember reading the TIS, I believe there was an overarching statement about if it wasn't mentioned, they were above D or above kind of thing, as a general, we didn't mention it because they're acceptable.
Okay.
But the applicant probably knows more than me.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson, looking at the conditions today, there are deficiencies. 2026 is a two-lane road. There's intersection issues at Midland. Those are in process, which is a good thing. We know in our conversations, and staff has as well, because they're planning utility improvements, that those plans are in motion, and they have been making, sending out right-of-way takes. We have not received ours yet, but other owners in the area have, so we're anticipating those. But I can tell you that the improvements that we will make, as well as the 2026 improvements, will improve an intersection, create a signal, and then we will also be accommodating Skyway, which doesn't exist right now, but we'll be building on the south side of Aviary and that intersection with Midland Farms, another signalized intersection there in the future. So improvements will be forthcoming. There will be a little bit of incremental as it relates to, as we're touching the frontage on Midland. ITD will make some improvements coming south on Midland Boulevard, and we will make the balance of those improvements on our side or on both sides as it relates to Midland Farms when we get there.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And Chair, I had a few more questions here. This one's probably maybe for Morgan.
Just Commissioner Larson, I wonder if we can, just with our new flow, we have questions for the applicant, then we'll follow by staff
yeah.
questions.
Yeah, let me see. I think I have two more questions for the applicant. I think it was a concern from staff that the street concern for the drainage in the canal, all of that is good. I guess I just wanted to hear verbal confirmation that's okay, because there seemed concerns, and one of the email descriptions just gave, hey, there's water at 60% and a lot of description, but no real yes or no, this is good or bad for irrigation
Are we talking specifically?
in Aviary.
Okay, are we talking specifically about the ability to irrigate the property, or the existing drains that are there, like the Madden and the Caldwell Highline, which both front on to Midland?
The clarification would be on irrigation. Can the property be irrigated? And does it meet code?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson, we do have more than sufficient water rights, surface water rights to irrigate the property and meet the city's code.
Okay. And then the last question was just a response from, I think it said Joshua Cutler, that they were concerned that Brighton doesn't have the best interest for Caldwell. The quote was that they think Caldwell is a trashy and we can't afford anything that deserves anything nicer. Could I just have a response from you for that comment? And that's my last question.
You bet, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Larson. When we develop, our intent is to do the best we absolutely can. We made an investment in Caldwell, our first investment in 2018, in a community called Arbor, which is just to the south of this property. We feel like we also checked many of the boxes of diversity of housing, and also being able to bring some commerce to the area. I don't agree with that statement. We do not view Caldwell as trashy. On the contrary, we feel like Caldwell has a bright future. We want to be part of that, and that's why we continue to invest out here. We could have taken maybe the more simple approach tonight and just looked at Aviary as a standalone. But we didn't feel like that was in the best interest of the city. I know the city right now is in the middle of an update to your comprehensive plan. There's been a lot of outreach. This process, this planning process is important. It's important that people are part of that they can talk about it. But I can tell you from Brighton's perspective, we are as concerned about from the day we start to the day we end. We maintain control of our communities from an HOA perspective until we've sold the last home and the last homeowner moves in. We maintain architectural control. There will be perhaps an unfair statement that small lots may be perceived as low income or less desirable. These communities that have a variety of housing actually elevate values for everyone. And so it's an interesting comment. I disagree with the comment, and I point to what we've done in Arbor as a good example of what we intend to do here with these properties and projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Boutros?
Okay, I have a couple of questions that are targeted, I think, towards the applicant. One of them may require some staff input. One of the issues with the aviary development was access to the open area on the north side, right by Highway 2026, and the discussion over a pedestrian crossover of some kind, whether it's a bridge or I don't know what alternatives there would be if they could underground the drain for a section or not for a level crossing. But have you had that discussion, and is there a commitment to provide that crossover? And it looks like doing that would or not doing it would affect the open area percentage that you get credit for. So you want to talk about that for a minute?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Boutros, did I get that right?
Yes.
I appreciate the question. The area, what is being referenced here on this exhibit, if you see where the 20 is, and there's this little kind of trapezoidal green area here, that's the area in question. We're waiting for ITD to tell us what they intend to do with that. As a standalone, there's really access to that from 2026 is difficult for vehicles. And we looked at it as well. We do want to use it if it still is ours. And so the answer that I would give you is that from an open space perspective, we are committed to creating some sort of crossover of that drain. There are other crossovers. We have roads that will cut across, so it would be fairly easy to do a crossover. It ultimately, and as Joe mentioned, what ITD decides to do will really determine what is remaining there. With that stated, we maintain our commitment to achieving the open space requirements under the PUD, and we'll continue to work towards that solution. If it remains completely like it is, yes, we will create another micropath, kind of in that knuckle. We'll create a micropath that goes over there and a bridge that goes over that area, so it is accessible. If we didn't do it, it would be a throwaway, and we agree it wouldn't count as open space. But we'll come up with a solution that is workable.
Thank you. With regard to the rail spur, how often is that spur currently used?
When I spoke with Sunrock, it's 2 to 5 times a week, depending on what they are having delivered. I don't live out there, so I can't tell you if that's a correct number, but that's what they've indicated to us as we've talked with them about their rail spur. On this exhibit right here, if there's another crossing of the rail spur, then it reduces the number of how long the train can be, because they can't stop on those public roads. They couldn't stop on 2026. They couldn't stop on the lower collector road. And if there's one to the north, they couldn't stop on that one either. So they would be, they usually bring in 35 cars. And the area that's represented there is about 35 cars long. So they could bring a train in with 35 cars, offload, and then take it out. If they couldn't do that, then the train would probably double, if not more than double, how many trains they had to bring in a week. But for them, it's super important to have that gap so they can bring a train in with 35 cars.
How is the rail separated from residences and businesses along the length, that diagonal through this whole development?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Boutros, right now there is very little separation from that rail line and existing residences along there. If there's been new development, I believe that there have been some separation. We've talked with Sunrock specifically that when the Lower 5 project comes in and we do a design there, and we actually show quite a bit of open space over there, that we would create a berm of sorts and a fence on top of it as well to create that separation. There's two issues. One is they have their industrial operation, which, you know, that's their main core of business, but then they also have the rail business that comes in as well. So we will very closely look at buffering, berming, and fencing both on the Lower 5 and the Midland Farms property.
So that it doesn't end up being a hazard for any kids who might wander down by that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
My last question. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, Commissioner Boutros, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to reiterate what the applicant has said, and that through those DAs that I mentioned that we're gonna write, we will absolutely require buffering for
thank you.
along that drain. In addition, specific to the Midland Farms area, our current master pathways and bikes plan has what they call a tri-city corridor required along the west side of the spur, so it would be in that R3 area. It's additional, even wider area that would be for some active transportation there. So absolutely, the city is aware of the buffering requirements and some of those additional issues, and we'll cover that in the DAs for those conceptual areas.
Thank you. My last question for you. There's the internal right-of-way issue for the collector in the aviary subdivision. What are the consequences if your request for amendment is not granted? So if they want to keep the full 70-foot right-of-way right down into the core?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Boutros, we would end up adjusting in those two areas. You see an alley area on the left, on the west side, and an alley area on the east side. We would adjust those to accommodate the right-of-way. In the areas that we've highlighted there is this landscape corridor coming through, getting them into the community, and then you start dispersing traffic from there. I would say if there wasn't any dispersion on those north-south legs where we're ending those areas, and we were coming all the way in, I would absolutely say yes. But we're starting to disperse the internal traffic there. It's also, this collector road system is internal to the property. It's not a byway, passway. That's why we have Skyway to the south and 2026 to the north. Could we adjust? We absolutely could adjust, but based on the connectivity that's shown north and south, that's where we've just asked, you know, if there would be a provision to stop the collector section. It's not a significant difference. We currently, I think we're showing about 68 feet of right-of-way. We actually would need to grow it to 72 because we have a detached sidewalk and a landscape or a tree-lined street coming through there, so it would get a little bit bigger. Could we accommodate it? We could, but we feel like, you know, that disperses the traffic sufficiently, and it doesn't need to be a collector all the way through.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're talking about a reduction to 68 feet from 72, a 4-foot reduction.
The requirement currently is 70 feet. We're showing it at 68 feet with detached sidewalks, but we looked at it with our engineering team, and we would need to increase it to 72 to meet our roadway standard and meet the city's specific width standards for the road.
Okay, so staff, do you want to jump in on this now or wait until we get to the staff questions? It's up to you.
Commissioner Boutros, we have talked about this internally, and we agree with the applicant that continuing that collector designation all the way into the center core of the development is not necessary. I would even argue that none of that road should be classified as a collector because it is not contiguous through the site. However, those entryways would be designed to a collector width just for access and ease into the site. But at those first intersections, if it's reduced at that point, staff does not see an issue with that.
Thank you. That was all I had for the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. One was just a interesting thing. As I was reading through the packet, I saw your neighborhood meeting notice, and I only saw one notice and in here, and it noted, so this would have been the letter that went out to neighbors, September 12th at 7 p.m. But then I see two sign-in forms, one for 6 o'clock and one for 7 o'clock, and I was just curious about, both on the same day, why there was two different sessions.
Mr. Chair, this was the second round of neighborhood meetings that we have done for the property and the project. I think the prior one was in May. The prior meeting was, we did a neighborhood meeting specifically for aviary earlier in the year in 2023. We had a fairly good turnout, but because this was a large project, we actually sent out two notices. We did them the same night, back to back. We did the area north of 2026 at 6 o'clock, and the property south of 2026 at 7 o'clock. And so there would be multiple signups for those different meetings, but the noticing expanded fairly dramatically based on what we did the first time, and we just felt like if people are going to take the time to come to a meeting and they want to have information answered, then we need to make ourselves available. And because there was a large number of the prior one, we felt like it'd be better just to have two. So that's why we did that.
In the TIS report, actually, I think it was in the engineering report referencing the TIS, there was a comment about the storage units and the impact of that and actually what was being proposed. Can you add some clarity to that?
I can. I think it was just a little misunderstanding as to the uses. The storage use has not changed. It was in the original TIS. Somehow, whether it was in our narrative or maybe it was in the TIS, but it showed or that was thought that the storage was going to be in the middle of the project where our community center was. In reality, it was always shown down on the south west corner of Skyway and Midland in that triangle piece. So just a little bit of confusion on where it was, but it was always accounted for in the TIS. I think there was just a little bit of confusion as to where we intended to put that. And so we talked with staff about that, but it was in the TIS from the very beginning.
And then my last question, I think it was a follow-up to something Commissioner Boutros asked. So in regards to the open space with the PUD, is that one of the provisions that you're asking for, the deviations you're asking for open space?
We are not asking for any deviations in open space, reducing the required percentage. There were, and Joe mentioned it, there was an open space calculation and interpretation on the pathway system. This one, I don't know if that shows it. Go back to along the Caldwell High Line and the Madden Spur, we have a landscape area and this will show it right here, a a landscape area, trees, then the sidewalk, and then landscaping, and then we hit the easement that the irrigation company controls. The question that came up in the staff report, and Joe already clarified it, was it said that we needed to have fencing on both sides, otherwise it couldn't count. So there's no argument on that. We only need fencing on one side, which is the lot side. That's where we can have trees. Our intent actually is to landscape to the top of slope and even down a little bit, just like we did in the Arbor subdivision, with the caveat that the irrigation district told us before is that if they come through and they clean, they're going to drop it on landscaping and we'll be responsible for that. We understand that, but we feel like actually landscaping all the way to the drain is the best solution and not just leaving it to weeds or whatever. So we were able to do that at Arbor, and we would carry that same theme through here as well. So I don't believe that there is an issue on the open space calculation, but I just wanted to clarify that fencing question.
Okay. So just to clarify, I just want to make sure, because the fencing, because I'm presuming that wouldn't be part of the calculation. So without that piece, that potential piece with next to 2026 that you showed, and with this, regardless of the fencing on the other side, that's on the irrigation side, you will have enough qualifying open space?
We believe, yes, we will.
Okay.
And we'll ensure that with staff.
Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Whitbeck.
I just want to clarify, traffic signal, the temporary signal at 2026 in Midland, when would that be installed in your plan?
That's a great question. That traffic signal is in ITD's fall court with the project. So when they do their expansion of 2026, and they're doing right-of-way acquisition right now, and we've been told that the intent is late this year, they would begin irrigation relocation and then start in earnest of the road going towards Star. And so that would be part of that.
Temporary as well as permanent, is what you're saying?
It would be permanent for the 5-lane road improvements that ITD is making. When they expand the road in the future, 20 years down the road, to 7 lanes, my guess is there would need to be some expansion, but that intersection at Midland in 2026 will have dedicated right-hand turn lanes, dedicated left-hand turn lanes. It will have the signal so that cars can move in and out, and it will be controlled, and they've designed for that. That's in their plans now.
And that Skyway and Midland, is that basically the same answer?
Skyway Midland is actually more in, it would be more in our court and in coordination with the city as well as Canyon Highway District Number 4 on the timing of that signal installation. We know that there's a recommendation that needs to go in. If we can secure all of the right-of-way at that intersection, you can kind of see it there in the lower right-hand corner. This is just the aviary side, but we have the right-of-way on our side. Midland Farms is to the north. There's another property owner, and that property owner may or may not be here tonight, but we would need to talk to them. But there's an open, or there's already a right-of-way that Canyon Highway District Number 4 owns in that alignment. So we will work to get that so that it is fully operational as well with the signal at the time that that requirement is there. Thank you.
Questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Wardle.
Thank you.
So now it's time for commissioners to ask any follow-up questions from staff before we open up to further public testimony. I'll see, Commissioner Larson, you want to start?
Yeah, I just had one. It was a clarification question for me, and I feel like all the commissioners, because I don't think we've talked about it ever before, but it was in the response to the Compass question, where they said that the number of housing in the area and the number of jobs are not forecasted in the same approach. And so I just wanted to see what their words is, however, it is below the forecasted number of housing in the area plus job housing are generally consistent with the communities in the Motion 2050 vision. So I just wanted to see what our clarification from staffs on housing versus jobs and how we are to delineate that when we make decisions. I think it's ever been brought up before.
Commissioner Larson, thank you. Good question. One, those Compass reports at times are difficult to understand in the way that they kind of write it all. I don't know if you saw it, like 5 years ago it was worse, so this is an improvement. In regards to the jobs to homes ratio, that's a very important component, period. As you know, you drive down 2026, it's a lot of agricultural land right now, et cetera. But we also know, as we've discussed thoroughly, it's going to be widened. It's a major regional thoroughfare all the way down to Boise. So it is something that's going to draw a lot of traffic, which then draws a lot of people, both in residence and commercial. The key there is commercial usually 90+% of the time follows the residential. That is something that planners always have to compete with when we want those big box stores like a Winco, when we want employment centers like any of the warehousing and large industrial stuff that a city wants for jobs. The issue becomes if we keep hammering on residential to continuously have bigger lots and eat up more land, that tends to delay that commercial. So when we're reviewing these things, we do analyze the density, we analyze all of those components, how much commercial there is, both in acreage, because you usually don't have the use set up prior to the zoning of it, but it is an important factor. There's not a formula that we can give you. Compass tries with their just jobs to homes ratio, but as they noted, it's out of whack right now in this area because there's just not a lot of development happening physically on the ground. So as that continues, those numbers will probably get to a better range. As I noted in my staff report, including additional highway corridor in this area is going to increase the ratio of jobs to housing, which is what we want to see. There's a specific ratio, I think Compass notes, I can't remember what it is. It's like 2 to 1 or something regarding housing to jobs that we will get as close as we can get to. And that's part of the future land use map and our comprehensive plan updates, where we want to increase the available area or the planned area for the commercial and the industrial users to create those jobs. Again, unfortunately, those follow rooftops. Regarding grocery stores, I've heard some unfortunately ridiculous numbers of how many rooftops they want to be in the area before they'll locate, and it's like in the tens of thousands. So that's why some of these things have not happened yet, and why they are hopefully coming soon as Caldwell develops further and further. I hope that somewhat answered your question.
I think so. So just to summarize, it's basically the ratio of commercial to residential is what they're summarizing here?
That's what they're trying to summarize, yes.
Okay, thank you. And we don't have a commercial to residential ratio that planning and zoning is looking for with the new comprehensive plan map?
Correct. No, that's not something we'll include specifically because we rely on Compass as they do these things regionally.
Gotcha, thanks. Good chair.
Commissioner Boutros?
Okay. In the overall package, there's an omission in the section for the findings of fact. It doesn't mention that there are conditions of approval that go along with it. In what we're going to read tonight, the correct text is here. That modification needs to be made in the overall package. In the conditions of approval section, staff says that the traffic impact study has to be amended. And then when you were doing the staff report, you said that some of the traffic impact study recommendations were included and some were not. I want to investigate or ask why some of those were not included specifically. The recommendation for a Midland to Site Access A southbound right-hand turn lane, Midland to Site Access A northbound left-hand turn lane, a Midland to Site Access E northbound left-hand turn lane. And then I'm going to ask the same question about the Canyon Highway 4 letter. But if you want to address those three first, why those were not included.
Commissioner Brewster's commission. Rob and Haley might be able to answer it better, but through discussions with staff as well as the applicant, a lot of those are going to require updates on the west and the east side of the development, whereas currently the development right now is only on the east side of Midland. So we can't ask technically for the right-of-way on the, or I should say the development on the west side of Midland. Through the TIS, eventually, and this will probably be handled through the DA as well, we will get those improvements in some capacity. Timing of that will be determined partially by the TIS as well as whatever we decide to put in the DA as a trigger. My understanding is that we anticipate those turn lanes because the TIS warrants them, However, our engineering staff reviews those, and if they have a different opinion, then that's what they do. I would stand to let them answer further if you need additional clarification.
So if you think that it's not necessary to put those in as a condition of approval now, that's okay, if that's your judgment.
Do you hear me now? Okay, there we go. Commissioner Boutros, do I understand correctly? Your question is, why are not all the parcels that are being contemplated tonight for annexation, addressed?
No, it's not the parcels. The TIS made specific recommendations on locations for turn lanes, whether they're southbound or northbound. If it's inappropriate to include them at this time, which is kind of the message I'm getting, then that's okay, especially if the development agreements are going to pick up those turn lanes later.
Yeah. So the turn lanes, as staff goes through the TIS, they analyze what this development is contributing. A lot of these turn lanes are going to be added, just as Joe mentioned, as the roads are built out. All the left-hand turn lanes on, for example, Midland, those will be added in because the section includes a center turn lane. And so things come as the roads are built out, but there will be some turn lanes that are mandatory as part of this development. And those are the discussions that we've had with the developer regarding the trip generation that this specific development is going to have. As some of the other sites come in and develop, and there's going to be other things triggered, and some of those would include, for example, the traffic signal at Skyway and Midland and things like that. And so we kind of monitor as things go and make sure that when those additional components are warranted, that they are installed.
Thank you. So moving on to the Canyon Highway District 4 letter, they requested two specific conditions, and the first one was mentioned by Commissioner Whitbeck, which is having a signal at Midland and Highway 2026. And the other one was improvements are needed at the Middleton and Lincoln Road intersection. It sounds like the timing works out well, that these are kind of pro forma, that these improvements will be in place before building permits are issued because of the natural time lag. But as a precaution, I would like to include these as conditions of approval in much the same way that we did for a similar development not long ago, to ensure that we don't create hazardous conditions. Now, if because those are that traffic signal at Midland and Highway 2026 was already put in as a condition of approval, we might think we don't need it here, but we can't control the timing of the development, and if this development goes in first, then we would want to ensure that either a temporary or permanent functioning traffic light is in place before we start increasing traffic.
So Commissioner Boutros, that's a great point, and the applicant answered it somewhat, and I agree with the applicant. 2026 is, ITD is planning to put a signal there. We've had this discussion ourselves about the timing component. Midland Meadows, I don't know if it was commission or council, added the condition that they cannot receive building permits until that intersection is operational, because the applicant, just like we, cannot control the timing of this development. Through the development agreement, we're going to work, because it's going to touch all 3 out of the 4 DAs. We're going to work on the timing of that as well to, again, give flexibility to the applicant, because understandably, what if ITD's timeline gets pushed, then they get pushed unnecessarily. They even have proposed offering the opportunity to install a temporary signal to help with the safety in that area, and we plan to accommodate that in the development agreement. So that is something that has been discussed, and we will hopefully be able to accommodate through the development agreement.
But I still think I want to put it in here as a condition of approval as a precaution. My last question was on page 186 of the package, the application package. There was an email from Chester, And in that email, they referenced a letter from the city of Caldwell in opposition to a Canyon County application by Zion Ventures. I have that application number here. Can you talk about what that letter was that went from the city of Caldwell to Canyon County?
Absolutely, Commissioner Boutros. Commission, I believe it was regarding that property directly to the west, at the southwest corner of the Midland 2026 intersection. I might have even wrote the letter. I honestly don't remember. I write a lot of things. It's very busy, as you know. I believe it was regarding a conditional use or something like that, or conditional rezone in order to accommodate a use that we did not find compatible with that area, both with 2026 as well as the planned development here and adjacent residential. It was a industrial use, I believe, is what was being requested at that time.
So, memory may be failing there. The letter actually says that the city of Caldwell opposed it on the basis that it was rich, productive agricultural land. And I don't know if that was the content of the letter or not, but I would like to find out.
That's a great question, Commissioner. Different site I'm thinking of them, there's been like 3 asking for mineral extraction, so I thought that's what that one was. But
Yeah.
It's supposed to be for highway corridor. I don't know why. I don't believe I would have said something about rich ag land for a designation adjacent to existing zoning as well as planned for highway corridor, which would not be agricultural land. We can definitely look into that. I probably will not have an answer for you tonight, though, but I can respond at a later date.
Okay, one moment. Is Chester signed up to speak?
No.
Okay. All right, I guess we're not going to be able to dig further into that. It would be appropriate, if this gets approved, to go to bring that up before city council as to why somebody was under the impression the city of Caldwell opposed development in this area. It doesn't, the reason that was given doesn't sound like a reason that would come from a city of Caldwell letter. But we need to know.
Understood, and
Thank
I'll
you.
look into it.
Okay, I think that was all I had for staff.
All right. My question for staff that I have is just curiosity. So the current DAs that exist for these respective areas, will these current DAs have an impact on the current comprehensive plan amendment process that we're going through? So I guess my curiosity is, because there's DAs in these plans, if the comp plan amendments propose some sort of changes, does the DAs impact that in some way? Like, we can't do it because there's DAs there for that respective area? Or is there a timeline since we were back in 2006?
Great question, Commissioner. There's kind of multiple ways to answer that. For the existing development agreements, they would no longer be applicable if this application packet were to go through.
Correct.
So they would just be null and void altogether, and then it would match what is being proposed with this. Theoretically, yes, as we are doing our updated map, we could go through here and just do massive changes to the whole area. Likely that will supersede, at least the designation will supersede what is in the development agreement. However, anything specific written in the development agreement goes with the land regardless and would supersede that designation. So it can go both ways. I don't think it should be an issue. I don't anticipate through these comp plan map changes that we're going to be doing a lot of changes in this area specifically. If we do, it'll probably be a little further to the east to make sure we're consistent with what Nampa has on theirs, which again is like mixed-use residential and some higher intensity uses. So I don't anticipate it being an issue.
Okay. That was my question that I still had for staff. Commissioner Whitbeck? No questions. All right. So moving down to the rest of public testimony, there was one other person signed up in favor. Mike Wardle, did you want to speak? Okay. No one signed up in neutral, and I have a few people signed up in opposition. Angel Guzman signed up to speak. say your name and address into the record, and you have no more than 5 minutes.
Sure. My name is Angel Guzman. I live on 2524 Midland Boulevard, right at the highway near Yamamoto's farms. Seeing that the development's being made as heavy commercial on the corner of a 26 highway. I drive through that intersection every day to go to work at the hospital at St. Luke's. That road is very busy in the morning with workers coming in from the fields, from Parma all the way down from Spokane, going down to Boise as likewise. And those roads tend to get very difficult for people trying to cross over to the other side to get to work in the Caldwell or Napa region near the downtown area. I'm just concerned that with structures of the highly commercial areas, if that would cause even more traffic hazards for a lot of people. I believe there was a couple of terrible accidents. I've seen them outside of my window from my house there, happening around on that highway. And concerned with more traffic, especially with pedestrian and residential areas, being around a highly commercial area, you know, I'm just concerned with that, as well as with the train yard crossing over. I hear that thing almost, I wouldn't say every night, but very more often than not. And with, you know, trucks trying to get in to and from, especially if Winco is expected to build a supermarket there, will it cause even more traffic delays, or will it cause a congestion right there, as we already have right now with the road constructions going downward at the highway? I'm just concerned with that as well as with irrigation and agricultural needs. My house uses a well, and with these residential areas being built as well as commercial areas, I was wondering if it's going to affect my property as well, there with, you know, with water rights and whatnot, as well as with infrastructure. As most of the people here can see, the Caldwell area around the farmlands are not very well developed, and I'm concerned just with if those areas are going to be developed first before residential housing and commercial districts and commercial use is going to be applied to, because I understand that while, you know, these have already been in motion since 2006, the people there who just bought property or housing there are concerned with as to whether or not, you know, their needs are going to be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to make a point of clarification to Commissioner Boutros' question. He asked about Chester signed up. I was looking for first names, so I went down and looked at first names. The individuals, Kevin and Andrea, both signed up in opposition and are here today, I'm presuming. So I apologize about that. I was looking down the first names side, but they both signed up as not wanting to speak.
I just wanted to go ahead.
What was your question?
I was just going to make a comment that it is phased out. There's 8 phases. And so for Avery and generally, historically, what we've seen is it takes somewhere between a year, 2 years, depending on how they do their phasing here. So it could take up to 16 years, theoretically, depending on how fast they build. So hopefully Highway 2026 will be done in 16 years. But theoretically, depending on this phasing, phase 1 is like the middle portion, so.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to
that was
help,
a response to the last
help them know.
speaker. Kevin or Andre, do you want to, you did sign up, so do you want to speak?
I'm open for questions or whatever.
If you don't mind, I think there was a question in regards to kind of that letter, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin Chester, 19757 Midland Boulevard, Caldwell.
Thank you. So in the email that you sent, you referenced a letter from the city of Caldwell. Can you talk about that letter?
So the letter was basically in opposition to the land use, that it didn't mix well with highway corridor, that it wasn't an allowed use. They wanted to build open lot storage units in that land. City of Caldwell sent a letter opposing that because it didn't mix with highway corridor. The applicant, my letter stated that the applicant is asking for highway corridor to be residential, which is also not a use in highway corridor. So I'm asking that the consistency remain, where if city's opposed to one, they should be opposed to both.
Thank you.
Yep.
Staff, can you respond to that?
Absolutely. Okay, there we go. Thank you, sir, for the letter and for answering the question I couldn't answer. I think we found the letter, but staff error, we didn't put the parcel number on it, unfortunately. But it was, the letter states regarding like open air storage, like automotive storage, which is correct, is not something we want in the highway corridor, future land use or zone. However, residential is an allowed use and a proposed use within the highway corridor area, period, per our future land use designations as well as in the zoning as well. So residential is, but it could be a mix of residential, high density even, as well as commercial, et cetera. So there's, highway corridor is a mixed use district, so it allows a mix of uses, period. Their requests tonight are to change some of the highway corridor to medium density residential. And so therefore highway corridor would theoretically not matter in this instance, which would be for aviary specifically, outside of the discussion of, do you want to change it from highway corridor or not, kind of thing. Even if we didn't change it from highway corridor, you can, their proposed land uses of single family are still going to be an allowed use, whether through the PUD or outright. So,
And so the letter didn't actually discuss retaining agricultural land as agriculture, because it was my understanding that on the property rights statutes, that is not possible to legislate, that whoever the property owner is has the right to do that development, that they don't have to retain it as agricultural land. Is that correct?
Commissioner Boutros, that's correct, yes. And the letter that we looked at does not mention anything about agricultural land.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
If
just
I-
to clarify, I think of Mr. Chester's letter, I'm looking right here, I didn't see that statement.
If I may, the Canyon County, that was their decision based on that proposed land use, was they were gonna retain it as agricultural.
Oh, okay, so, but that's a decision that doesn't necessarily
Right,
carry forward from the city of Caldwell. All right, thank you, sir.
thank you.
All right. And, Andrea Chester, are you good? All right, but she did sign up, just to note, she was in opposition. And, David Andrus signed up to speak in opposition. Name and address in the record and no more than 5 minutes, please.
David Andrus, 19451 Knott Lane. Shocked to hear that this is not considered a dense project, even though it lists 3.4 acres or units per acre. As much as I could tell, some of these small lots are 30 feet wide with 4 feet in between them. Approximately 200 of them are of the smaller nature. I don't know how you get parking for everything. There's going to be a lot of cars that are parking outside, potentially along roads. Even the larger lots in this subdivision it range from 0.13 to a third of an acre. So I mean, to me, I'm not sure what kind of magic you use to get 3.4 units per acre. I'm sure it's open spaces and things like that, but to say this isn't a dense population is in my mind not correctly stated. Concerned about parking, because on a 30-foot lot you can't park very many cars there. Even the larger ones, not that large. Concerned about the traffic on Knott Lane. Knott Lane is only a mile between Chinden and Linden. Linden, I doubt there will be a light on Knott Lane. I don't know that, but I highly doubt that. It's not a mile intersection, and it's only 1 mile between Chinden and Linden. Linden will have a lot more traffic on it. Linden services a high school, which is just down the road within the mile of Knott Lane. So the traffic that is going to increase in this whole area with this subdivision, and then they mentioned there was another subdivision to the east of 300 and something acres. It just seems like this is way too high of a dense project to go into this kind of an area. Everybody's concerned about Highway 2026 and Midland, but Knott Lane on the other side. The only way to get out of that is to go down to Linden, and then you're into the school traffic as well. There's also a wastewater ditch that goes along the side of Skyway. Hasn't been addressed, I don't think. So anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you. All right, and he was the last one to sign up, so at this time, I'll ask the applicant to come, to sign up. Maybe there was another form up there. Oh, okay. Sorry, there was multiple pages. Are you Whitney? Okay. So Whitney, go ahead and say your full name and address into the record in no more than 5 minutes, please.
Okay, my name is Whitney Cutler. I live on 19904 Knott Lane, Caldwell. So we moved here back home to Idaho. Idaho is home to us. We were living out of state, and we moved our 4 kids here. My husband works in downtown Boise. We chose to live in Caldwell because we wanted to raise our kids up in like a farming, agricultural type of culture. So for us, it's extremely disappointing to think that right across the street from us is going to be a massive subdivision, where I agree with my neighbor Dave Andrus that they are very packed in, extremely tight, and I don't think that they took into account that most people here want to live on acres or be out in farmland. If we wanted to live in Meridian, we would have lived in Meridian. So we moved our kids here to Caldwell. With that said, I have 4 children, and they are in the school districts, and I'm here to tell you they are extremely overrun. We have kids in East Canyon Elementary. They go to school in a modular because there's not space in the school. Now, I know a school has been approved for that area, but even with that, if you put in 472, 71 family homes, if you say those are, let's say, 4 people per family, we're up to like 2,000. 1,000 of those would be children going to schools, right? My son's in the middle school, and he has to share lockers because there's not enough room, and that's at Summit View, which is a new junior high. So there really is not, the schools are very overrun, and I'm here to tell you that as a parent of 4 children. We have gone to all of the meetings that Brighton has held. We have talked, the first meeting we went to, we talked about the expansion of Highway 2026. They said they did not know about it. They did not even know it was happening, whereas we have gone to all the meetings on the expansion of 2026. It affects our neighbor right next to us. It cuts into his acreage, and so we know all the plans. So we brought it up. We told them where it was. They said they didn't really mention anything about it, didn't act like they cared. By the time the next meeting rolled around, hadn't accommodated that once again. And I know the city guy behind me, planner, has said, well, that doesn't really matter once it comes in, but to me it matters. I think if that's been brought up and brought to your attention, wouldn't your plans reflect that? Their plans never reflected that. So again, I just don't think they have a lot of respect for what's happening or like knowledge, because Highway 2026 is putting in awesome bike paths and running paths. So as far as their argument of like, we would love paths and like, we're gonna have those on Highway 2026. So we do not need them in a subdivision. Also, as my neighbor stated, Knott Lane, Commissioner Larson brought up other roads affected, and they didn't say anything, but I agree with him, Knott Lane would be hugely affected. Right now, it's a very quiet lane, once again, why we moved there. And it will be highly impacted because I don't need to use 2026 to get my kids to school. And Linden is already extremely backed up. We have to leave our house 35 minutes before school starts to even make it to East Canyon and then on to my kids' junior high. So anyways, those are my points that I would like to bring up that I think were not really addressed, that the roads will be very highly impacted, and that's not why we moved out here to Caldwell that we love so much. So thank you.
Thank you. All right,
Chair,
Commissioner Larson.
just a clarification for the school things, just for you to know. So the schools are state funded, and the city council and planning and zoning has asked before, and we cannot do impact fees on any new developments for schools per state law. So you have to ask the legislators of Idaho to pay for the schools because they will not let us do it. So Meridian and us have asked historically in the past for people to pay per door. We're not asking these guys because by law it's not required. But historically, and we can't ask them to do that, and there's no impact. There's impacts for fire, for medical, for police, but there's nothing for schools. So although we want to up the schools, the city of Caldwell can't do that at this point until the state changes the code or gives us the authority, or other cities in the valley, to do that. So just wanted to let you know that we do want the schools to be well. I have a 1-year-old. We want them to be good. But from a city level, we can't do anything right now.
An additional point with regard to that, we did receive a letter from Valley View School District where they said they could accommodate the capacity expected from new enrollment in this development. And so that is a judgment call that Valley View makes that we have to abide by. We are charged by statute with finding that all of the various agencies can accommodate. And so when we get a letter like that from Valley View, that closes the issue for us with regard to school capacity.
All right. So with that, that was our last testimony. So we'll ask the applicant to come up for a rebuttal of no more than 5 minutes.
Commissioners, appreciate the opportunity just to summarize here at the end and to request your approval for the property and the projects that are in front of you tonight. One of the things that we do work on a lot are roadways. Roadways are important, just as important as education, just as important as life safety. We did do a TIS on this project and Midland Farms. One of the things that we've committed to at our expense was mentioned here is you have to go all the way down to Linden. We actually are going to be able to create an east-west road, which is Skyway, which will make the connection from Knott Lane over to Midland Road. And that would, will fix a little bit of the traffic that has to go south and then come their way back north as well. We're going to build that road. We're working closely with ITD. I'm not sure the comment made that we were unaware. We've been aware of ITD's plans for 2026 for a long time. In fact, we've been working with ITD on their expansion of 2026 at Highway 16 in Ada County called Chinden, but we've been aware of their long-range plans in this area. The thing that has been in question regarding this is what is the right-of-way take that they need. You would think they would take the road down the middle of the center line as it exists today, but there are some constraints to the north. So they've actually are talking about, and we've accommodated that, shifting that road south. And so there will be some adjustments made, but again, we have not received any request or formal documentation from them, but expect that here soon because other owners in the area have. We feel like, yes, this is a change, but I want to go back just quickly and we need to acknowledge that these properties have been in the city, this 400 acres, 97% of this has been in the city since 2006, has been annexed, zoned, and the city has also made investments or anticipating investments out here, whether it be sewer, water, for the growth to happen. I don't want to be insensitive or not acknowledge the change that's going to happen. It will happen. Our commitment, however, is to do our best work, work with the agencies on expansion of roadways, ensure that there are services that are coming to the area. And we feel like we're able to accomplish that with planting all 406 acres at once instead of a piecemeal approach, which could bring in 37 acres here or 100 acres there. We're giving you the whole picture at this time. We will have in the future further applications that will come forward on the lower 5, Highline and Midland Farms to address specific things that are being addressed here in Aviary. But this sets the framework and the groundwork for the city and what they can anticipate in the future for growth and development out here at Midland in 2026. As I mentioned, we're excited again to do another project, to be again a part of the city, to work with your your staff in engineering and planning as the projects go forward. And we just simply ask for your approval tonight of the, sorry, let me get to the end here. The comp plan amendments, the annexation request, the zoning modifications, and the development agreements for Midland 2026, as well as the preliminary plat and the PUD for aviary. And we request that you send those to the council with an affirmative approval and have them then take the next step in the process. Again, appreciate your time, appreciate staff's effort. It was a very large application, and Joe did a very good job, as well as the engineering department, of breaking it down into pieces that make sense. So I stand for any questions if you have them at this point, or otherwise, appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Any final questions for the applicant? Let's go down the row. Commissioner Larson?
No, I don't have any more.
Thank you. Commissioner Boutros? No. I don't either. Mr. Whitbeck? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So this,
I do have a question for staff.
okay, there's a question for staff from Commissioner Boutros.
Okay, so we had a resident talk about his concern regarding well rights. Could you talk about what the well rights are and what the mitigation is should he find that his well is damaged in any way?
Thank you, Commissioner Boutros. This development obviously does not have the right to have any negative impacts on the well rights of another individual. I don't know the nature of the well rights or any of the details, but what I can tell you is that at this location, I believe, I understand where this resident lives. There are no municipal wells proposed in this area, which, if there was a municipal well proposed nearby, then that would be a concern of maybe drawdown in their well. But the municipal well is actually a couple miles north, and so I'm not anticipating any negative repercussions on the well, and certainly nothing with the well rights would be influenced by the development of this developer.
Thank you.
Thank you. That wouldn't be an appropriate use of this time. You would be able to do that afterwards. You can certainly ask staff questions after the hearing. All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to close public testimony.
So moved.
A motion for Commissioner Larson, a second for Commissioner Whitbeck. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now it's the time for us as a commission to deliberate. We'll just kind of open this up.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Chair, I think overall the project is pretty solid. There are reasonable concerns that we want to do our best to, for the city and for the applicant, to find a balance. I think that overall the project looks solid. I love all of projects that have pools to mitigate the downtown Caldwell, where residents can just go to their natural pool and just hang out there. And I love that you bring in commercial, because I feel like, as we talked about the ratio, Caldwell has a lot of housing, but not very much commercial. So projects that bring forth commercial are really important to me, particularly for Caldwell. So for the fact that it's bringing commercial alone is a big reason on why I would lean towards yes. But I think overall the project is doing its best ability, and they are taking a large cost to help add mitigations to traffic at time unknown or uncertain, waiting for ITD. But I feel like the project overall is very solid. There are some issues, as with all projects, but I feel like the good outweighs the bad on this one.
No, I tend to agree. The traffic impact study was quite extensive, and it addresses areas like Linden all the way east to North Side Boulevard. The traffic issues that are described by folks tonight are real. They will be fixed eventually. Because we're unable to determine the timing of those, we can't give the assurance that there isn't going to be an intermediate period of pain. And we all live here, and we're all going to suffer through that, and I'm sorry about that. This development, I also want to talk about the issue of, we'd all love to live on larger lots. I think there's a real quality of life issue associated with that. but it runs counter to the way our society seems to be going. And in that light, what makes this project attractive to me is it is easily the best planned project I've seen in more than 2 years on this commission. They actually mix different types of housing as well as providing that desperately needed commercial. So it is solid. It is well planned. I've gone through the application in great detail, and I was impressed with it throughout.
Thank you.
Chair, sorry, I had one other thing to add. For everyone else to know for the roadways, is that the city does not have extra funding for roadways. We've asked before. That's why there are some sidewalks in Caldwell that don't look great, because there is not just spare funding. So developers come in and they fix the roadways for us as they develop. And so the lighting for all roadways that aren't tied to ITD or tied to the state, the city has to wait for a developer to come in or get a federal grant to fix sidewalks and roads. So we are thankful that this developer wants to pay for those, because they're not paid for any other way.
Thank you. Commissioner Waybeck?
I agree with the concerns that have been shared, but I also am in agreement with the quality of the project and how it fits the comprehensive plan and the development of the city of Caldwell. That's where we're at and that's where we're headed, and so I would be in favor of it.
Commissioner, I guess my concerns, I think that the Avery sub-area, to many of the points, is a thoughtful area. My concern is the full ask. We're talking about hundreds of acres here, some with conceptual plans. And my biggest concern with that is that we're actively going through a comprehensive plan process with the public, and so we're trying to engage the public in doing these things. And this has multiple conceptual plans, but without that is asking us to engage in a comprehensive plan amendment in areas that aren't as detailed as the one that actually they're asking for the initial plat. So my concern is that as a public member, right, trying to be engaged with this comprehensive plan process, is that we're asking for the public's input, and yet we're going to make some changes now before we kind of resolve that part of that process for plans that are very conceptual. I would be in favor of the sub-area, the Avery sub-area, because it has the nuance and the specific, right? There's a plan there, and I can understand that. I can see that. I think that as a community member, I can conceptualize that a bit more than these other areas. And so I'm struggling, and for me, at this moment, with the current suggested motion of all of this together, I'm a no vote for that. I would be in favor of the Avery sub-area specifically and exclusively. I don't know if others have thoughts on that.
So the changes that are being suggested and recommended here, aren't they still open for amendment again if the comprehensive plan would be in conflict with any of those?
I think we could see clarification, but I think if we approve this and we'll recommend this and it was approved by council, then that would stand, and so that the comprehensive plan process wouldn't be able to make any additional changes at that point to those specific areas that are conceptual in nature at the moment. But I think Deputy Director Bisa has a question or a comment.
Yes, Morgan Bisa, Planning and Zoning. As applications are approved, if this were to be approved, the city is forwarding all of these approved comprehensive plan amendments to the consultants working on the plan so that the plan would accurately represent them. We would hope not to go in and do a comp plan amendment to something that was just approved by council, the month prior. I will say that while we don't have a new future land use map yet, and we don't know exactly what that map is going to look like, a lot of the items proposed by the applicant are in alignment with the ideas that the city has and are looking at that, such as having highway corridor along or medium density residential along major thoroughfares, having step down zoning from a more intense use like highway corridor, stepping down through a variety of housing types before you get to residential estates. So I will say that what they have proposed is very much in alignment with the direction the city appears to be going, even though I do not have a new future land use map to show you yet.
And I don't disagree with that. Like, I think it makes sense. I just feel like as a commission for at the moment, to make a recommendation like this when we're actively asking the public to engage in this process, I think we're doing a disservice to the public process of the comp plan, in my opinion, by making such large changes to these conceptual ideas. Again, I like the specific plan because I think there has the nuance, and I can see that, and it's not conceptual. I know what's happening, and I recognize that piece also has comp plan amendment, but I can see what it's going to be. We see maps, we see all this, all the plats, and so that would make sense. And yeah, so that continues to be my struggle. I think you were going to say something, Commissioner Boutros.
Yeah, so we're talking about the aviary section of this being about a quarter of it. For the other parts which don't have plats yet, I believe that it would only come back to us if a rezone or a comprehensive plan change or an annexation is required. If it is just a plat, it would only go to the hearing examiner. Is that correct?
Commissioner Boutros, I believe you are correct. However, a caveat would be, if you so wish, one of the DA provisions that could be added or recommended to be added is that they have to get a DA modification with the future applications in order to go through P&Z and then council.
But
and
that's not common. That's not normally how it's done, is it?
Maybe not here, but in other developments, and depending on how significant the change is from whatever is in the DA to what they are proposing. Because these are so conceptual in nature, in my previous experience, that is very common. Brighton is very familiar with that in other jurisdictions of having to go through that P&Z commission and council process once a more solid plan is developed. So it is not typical technically of Caldwell, no, but it is typical of the Valley, yes.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, does that address your concerns with regard to future development on the other three sections of this?
I think it's helpful. I think it's more of the optics of this in regards to, like, I mean, part of the comprehensive plan process right now, we're actively trying to seek information. I know I saw Commissioner Boutros at the vision workshop up there. We're trying to get people into it because we want them to be a part of defining that. And I still think, I think that helps. I at this moment, I'm not in favor of this thing as a whole right now. And I'm one commissioner of four right now, so it is a majority.
So is it possible to approve one section of this and have the remainder come back? My impression in looking at the total package was that it was a comprehensively planned package. If the developer sticks to the labels that are on the different segments of the development, that was sufficient to satisfy me. But, so the question to staff is it possible to approve one part of this, the aviary development, and have the remainder of it come back when the planning is more mature, which is, I think, what you're asking?
Yes, just clarification more after the comprehensive plan amendment process through the city has been completed.
Commissioner Boutros, as well as, I apologize, Commissioner Zamora. I keep forgetting your name, I apologize. The first, technically, yes. However, it gets extremely messy as we go through the process. Staff does not recommend that because this was submitted as a comprehensive project. I will also note that, especially for the R1 areas north of Midland 2026, if at that time in 2006 those had been annexed and there was already an existing future land use designation like there would be today, there would be far less needs to modify the map because it would probably already be highway corridor and medium density residential. We wouldn't be having this discussion of going from low density to highway corridor, et cetera. So not that I'm necessarily a proponent for any of it, I'm just staff. Logically, that is what would occur. So I definitely understand your point, and that is your absolute opinion in regards to the public input. I will also note, the applicant has stated to me that they would be in favor of a DA provision requiring them to come back through commission and council in order for you guys to see all future development. If that helps quell any fears for you guys.
Chair, would you be satisfied with that condition with the DA?
I would still be a no vote on that. I do think that, I think that's, again, that still kind of impedes that public process in this. I think I would be different if we weren't actively engaged in the comprehensive plan review process that we're going through right now. If this was 6 months ago, before that was in the process, I probably would be a yes vote for this. But I do think that as a public member, that gets to have a vote right now, but also knows people that don't get to have a vote at the table right now to make recommendations to council. That would be a frustrating process. And because it is such a large amount of land that we're asking to have involved in this. And it may be, and unfortunately it's a timing thing, it may be that the comprehensive plan, to the point that staff made, is that it falls within this approach. But I think that's for the public, through our public process, to decide. Particularly for the things that are so conceptual, right? Like the preliminary plat portion is clear, makes sense. We can speak to it. We can hopefully mitigate some of the concerns in regards to traffic and those types of things for residents. And so I think that's where, for me, that nuance lies. Further discussion.
Yep. Well, sorry. It looks to me like there are potentially 5 different conditions of approval that we would like to add in addition, on top of what is already in the staff report. The first one is adding the condition of doing the pedestrian crossover to the open area. The second one is to have a temporary or permanent functioning signal at Midland and Highway 2026. The third one is the improvements at Middleton and Lincoln to be completed, both of those before building permits can be issued. The fourth is the staff recommendations for the late exhibit conditions as amended, as recommended by the staff. And the fifth is for the applicant to reappear before the P&Z Commission when the new comprehensive plan is complete and with additional planning completed, but we need to specify what that additional planning completed is. If we specify all 5 of those, I think I could vote for this.
I guess my curiosity with that last one would be, if we make these amendments and they fall within that, at what point would we as a commission make any recommendation that says they can or can't do something with that specific area?
That's a good question. I don't know, because we haven't done anything like this before.
I would be with the thought that, as they're suggesting, that we just add a DA that just says, hey, if you're going to have a new plat,
Yeah, that is item 5.
any new plat change would be in the DA. If anything, just any change. Doesn't matter if it's the same zone type, say R1 to R1, R2 to R2. It's whatever they have, highway corridor to highway corridor, as long as it's coming back and something is being developed, that they would bring it back before us and then go through city council.
So I'm striking the language of additional planning completed and replacing it and with any new plat.
Commission, Mr. Chair. This is, again, something that's come up previously for me. The DA provision I would likely write would be something to the effect of, the applicant shall be required to go through a DA modification application with any future development of this sub-area. Insert X. That would likely be how I would write it. In addition, one comment that you said that's concerning is regarding the Lincoln intersection. That is too far outside of the boundaries of the project, and the city cannot require that because it's an off-site improvement that is beyond the bounds of the project. So I wanted to make that very clear. That's why it was not included as a condition of approval by engineering.
I understood, but Canyon Highway District 4 made it specific for this development. They picked that intersection for this development, and the reason for that is Lincoln is a major road going across, and when you get over to Middleton, it's a disaster.
Commissioner Boutros, just to respond to that, I was reading that letter from Canyon Highway District 4, and they were looking at the entire area as development, and so what would make more sense is to levy that improvement at Middleton and Lincoln as part of one of the properties that's developing on the north side of 2026. The aviary site really does not have any influence over that intersection, and so it could still be a part of this development as a whole, but it would be part of the north. When the north property comes back in, then that's when that would be more appropriate.
And presumably, we would get another letter from Highway District 4 pertaining to that new property, asking for that improvement to be done there.
Correct.
Sold.
Other thoughts?
Commission, I apologize, Joe, one more time, hopefully. There already is a condition of approval regarding the Midland intersection in the 2026. I did just want to clarify that for Commissioner Boutros. That's already in the staff report. Requiring a signal to be there. Staff
Was
plans-
that in the engineering report or elsewhere?
I believe it was in the engineering report, sir. It was a condition of approval already.
Okay.
And am I understanding correct that requirement is prior to any occupancy permit?
Commissioner Whitbeck, that is correct. It's at the very top of the engineering report that says no CO shall be issued for the proposed reference developments until a traffic signal is fully operational at the intersection of Midland. That is what I had discussed earlier, that through the DA, in addition to this condition, I will probably have a little bit more flexibility in there for the applicant to install a temporary signal should ITD's timeline be pushed out, which both the city and the applicant want that opportunity to do that.
I'll just make my last point about my concern, and then I certainly, if there's more discussion, we can have it, or I'll entertain a motion after that. My concern with the DA, with just simply adding the thing to the DA, the modification there, or the additional condition, is it appears to be more of an exercise of futility at that point, because if we're right now, part of this motion is or several comprehensive plan amendments, when it comes before us in a future hearing, that's going to be the land use, so it's going to be in compliance, so it's just going to be an exercise of, well, because we wanted to see it again. So I don't know if it benefits, again, the public process of engaging in the holistic comprehensive plan amendment that we're attempting to engage our community with, and that's one of the big things I keep hearing about. We need to get people involved in this process, and I think if we start making amendments for conceptual things that we can't attempt to mitigate their concerns with specificity, with talking about traffic impact studies, with having this dialogue right now, that's an area of concern for me. So other discussion, or I would entertain a motion.
So before we do that, can you give me the language again that we need to insert for the DA?
Commissioner Boutros, making me think tonight. The language that I would probably use is the applicant shall be required to complete a DA modification application. With any new development application for said sub-area, whatever. I would put that in each DA, so it would be sub-area XX.
I know I got it wrong.
That's okay.
The applicant shall be required to complete what?
okay, let me back up. When commission makes motions and these types of languages and conditions have been discussed, commission is allowed to say per staff. And through the public record, I will write that condition myself, and it will adhere to this because we have minutes, et cetera, et cetera. So you do not have to state it specifically unless you want to. If you want to, it should read something to the effect of the applicant shall be required to obtain a DA modification approval. I keep changing the verbiage, but that's close enough. With any new development for sub area, whatever, which is really technical.
We'll try.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I'm willing to make a motion.
Commissioner Boutros.
Well, we need to actually close.
It's already closed.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Do I need to read the case numbers again and then based upon the testimony, or just the based upon the testimony?
Case numbers.
Okay. Case number ANN 23-16, CPM 23-11, DEV 23-4, PUD 23-6, SUB 23-42, and ZON 23-9. Based upon the testimony and evidence in record in this matter, and upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth herein, do hereby determine and move as follows. The request for a comprehensive plan amendment, annexation of 11.47 acres with a zoning designation of R2, rezoning of approximately 309 acres, a development agreement modification, and preliminary plat approval for the Aviary Subdivision Planned Unit Development is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions of approval as presented and amended, and with the following conditions. 1, the Aviary Subdivision will add a crossover to the open section along 2026 to get credit for meeting the open space requirement. There shall be, we are including staff recommendations for late exhibit conditions as amended, and the applicant shall obtain, the applicant shall be required to obtain a DA modification approval for any new development.
That was a motion from Commissioner Boutros. Is there a second?
Second?
There's a second from Commissioner Whitbeck. Roll call, please.
Boutros?
Yes.
Whitbeck? Larson?
Yes.
Zamora?
No. And with that, the motion carries, and I'll go ahead and close this public hearing, which takes us to our next item on the agenda, which is adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Commissioner Larson moved.
Second?
Second from Commissioner Whitbeck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.